It's Thursday, June 2nd.
From inside the WTOP newsroom, this is the DMV Download, presented by Steamfitters Local 602. Learn how Steamfitters can benefit your business at steamfitters-602.org.
Here are the stories we're working on for you today. College enrollment is down and continues to decline, especially at community colleges, which usually see a jump during economic downturns. WTOP's Mike Murillo says the reason for the enrollment dip is complicated.
So we saw some bigger declines during the pandemic, but we've seen an overall decline since essentially the Great Recession, 07-08.
And a Maryland professor is spearheading an effort to introduce minority students to our national parks. WTOP's John Domen tells us why this Bowie State professor is hoping the idea takes off.
As he said it, representation matters.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Cloherty.
And I'm Luke Garrett. College enrollment went down during the pandemic, but even as COVID-19 eases, the number of college students is getting smaller and smaller. Community colleges, which usually see an influx of students during economic downturns, have been particularly hard hit by enrollment declines.
Nationally, enrollment is down 9% at community colleges, and it's lower in parts of our region. Maryland has seen a 14% downturn. WTOP's Mike Murillo has talked to a number of students and administrators trying to understand this drop, and he joins us now. Mike, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
So you talked to a local community college student. We'll just want to highlight his story because he actually had to drop out during the pandemic and then come back. Can you tell us what you learned from this one person's experience?
Of course. So what we're looking at is the decline in college signups for new enrollments at these community colleges in the area. And so one student I reached out to was Abdi Noor. He's in Vienna, Virginia, goes to Nova College, and he wanted to get his information technology degree. His long story short, he went to Wake Forest, but had to drop out back when he was younger and just got a career without finishing his college education, so he wanted to go back. So signed up in 2020. Not a good year to sign up.
Tough.
And so essentially he signed up, but for him it was a lot of family, they decided to create their own bubble, right? So all the family members were moving into the same house again because of this, and brothers and sisters.
And that kind of affected the quiet time.
And he got COVID 3 times. So with all that happening to this poor guy within the first few weeks of trying to get back into his education, he said, all right, I'm putting the brakes on it, and just started again in January. So he's one of the anecdotal stories here of why we saw a bigger decline. Now, we have seen a decline in community colleges pretty much since the Great Recession. We saw a lot of people run to go get their community college education then, or any college education, or change careers because there weren't as many jobs, right, with the recession. But this time around, a different story as we somewhat exit the pandemic. We have a lot of jobs out there, so maybe not as many people running to find a new career or something like that. So in his case, again, he finally got himself back into classes, and
I'm enjoying it and taking full advantage of it. And it is a shame that the rates are declining. I think other people should too.
he's one of the people that these colleges are trying to attract, right? You're a 29-year-old who has been out of the college pool. He's not the average college student age, right, which is 18 to 24.
And you spoke to other community colleges around the area. You know, how deep are these drops?
You know, there's a difference between some of the college. Virginia seemed to fare a little better when you looked at community colleges as a whole than Maryland. But overall, you saw single digits to the teens maybe when it comes to the amount of the enrollment number that dropped. We looked at several different schools and talked to several different schools, and they have noticed this decline even before the pandemic. So that's the big thing here. It's what can we learn? Because, yes, they kind of expected the bigger COVID drop, right? Because there was this run to online. So maybe some people didn't have the connectivity they needed at home, which is a whole bigger problem, a whole other story.
Right.
But, you know, was it resources that they didn't have or financial hardships? I mean, you still have to pay. Community college is cheaper, but it still costs money. So if you lost work or had hours cut or something during the pandemic, there's just so many different elements there. That's what they cited as some of the reasons for these drops in numbers, but it still, in their mind, was a sign that they need to kind of change course here and have some new ideas on how they attract students moving forward.
So they learned from the pandemic, as we all did in different ways, but it wasn't just the pandemic that they're kind of citing these numbers for, correct?
No, exactly. So we saw some bigger declines during the pandemic, but we've seen an overall decline since essentially the Great Recession, 07-08.
Yeah.
So that was their record-breaking year, and it's only been going down for most schools since then.
And in your reporting, I heard some of the administrators you talked to talk about birth rates being why some community college rates are a little lower now.
That's an interesting one, too. Birth rates are down. So that means the kids now that are going through high school, there's not as many of them that are going to go to college. So that means your pool of prospective students is shrinking. So that's why one interesting thing I heard from several colleges, Prince George's Community College, I talked to Nova College and Montgomery College, they all are looking at how do we attract more people who may have been out of the college realm for a while. You know, you're in your 20s, your 30s, 40s, doesn't matter, right? You can always go back and learn something new. And I think another interesting thing we're seeing more of too, they still want to attract those students that are in high schools, right? So dual enrollment. There are a lot of kids, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of kids now who are graduating with their associate's degrees when they get their diploma for high school.
Overachievers.
I know,
Wow,
right?
dang.
But yeah, so there's a lot of that going on. So I think, you have all these ideas, and that's what their hope is, as they change things, figure out how much virtual there is. Like Prince George's, they say 68% of their students still want to go online. But then that's not the case at every other college. So I guess the word community, right? You're in the community. They need to figure out what their community wants. And so that's the challenge there. Figure out what is best for your community. And also, how do you attract more than just your average 18 to 24-year-old? Because one interesting thing here, too, is who are they competing with? The universities. So because you have fewer students all around. So you're having all of higher education is seeing this decline. We focused on community colleges because they're having the biggest decline when it comes to student populations. But it's hitting higher education all around.
I think they're being relatively creative. I mean, they have all these continuing, even if you look on Montgomery College, for example, they have gardening classes and painting classes and learn French or whatever. So you have that older population who maybe is just interested in different types of education. You have the partnership with the high schools. I mean, they have a lot of different things other than just the, hey, do you want to get, this degree to forward your career? But I mean, what does this mean for the future of community colleges in our area? Did they talk about that at all? Because obviously, if you don't have the money, you can't keep offering those programs.
Well, right now, they're in pretty good shape because in the CARES Act, there was millions of dollars that went to community colleges to help a lot of the students who are having financial issues staying in college. So, but there is a long-term picture here that they have to look at. What are the financial offerings? Like Prince George's Community College has sort of a special, almost like a buy one, get one free for classes and stuff like that.
Wow.
So, you're seeing some strategies there to try to help financially as well. So that's one way they're looking at it. And then you also have, how do we make this easier for people? Maybe make what we were doing for so long, it worked, but maybe there are different ways to do things. Offer 7-week classes or 13-week classes, or offer certificates instead of getting your associate's degree, or certificates that you get while you get your associate's degree, right? You can get a lot of Google certificates and this and that online.
Right. To show you have expertise in something. Maybe you're not the expert, but you're getting there. Yeah.
But it's enough to put on a resume and actually get a job, some of these certificates.
Totally.
So they're trying to get into that as well. It's all about how can you expand with what you have. And I think that's some of the thought here. Maybe we can expand in different ways. And of course, just try to make it the experience easier as well. I talked to another student who said, some of the issues she had was, transferring credits and that sort of thing. So that's definitely something they want to look at, making sure they're better at that as well. And that's always the struggle too.
The barrier of entry is a little easier. Yeah.
Well, WTOP's Mike Murillo, thank you for helping us understand this decline in community colleges.
You got it. Anytime.
And after the break, a professor's 1,500-mile journey with 10 minority students and why he thinks introducing them to national parks is well overdue. If you want to save money and grow profits on your next commercial heating, cooling, HVAC, or refrigeration project, go with the men and women of Steamfitters Local 602. You can trust the experience of its workforce, members who have expertise in heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, and process piping to deliver work that's on time and on budget. For a partner you can trust who's mutually focused on your bottom line and to schedule, contact Steamfitters Local 602 at steamfitters-602.org. That's steamfitters-602.org. Steamfitters Local 602, changing lives.
Thanks for listening to the DMV Download. If you like the podcast, head to our show page, give us a rating, and leave a review.
We read all of them and use as suggestions to improve this show that we're so proud of. It also helps other listeners find this, our region's only local daily news podcast.
Thanks for making us a part of your day. The majesty of the Grand Canyon, the colossal Rocky Mountains, and the epic Great Sand Dunes of Colorado. National parks are a treasure, but one that's mostly enjoyed by white people. Surveys of national parks show that less than 2% of visitors are Black, less than 5% are Hispanic, and 5% are Asian.
A local professor is trying to change that. Sumantha Reddy, a geography professor at Bowie State University, is just back from leading a group of 10 students on a trip through the Southwest. And WTOP's John Domen got to talk with a professor and a student about this 1,500-mile adventure and the idea behind it. So thanks for being here to start with. I think especially because we're all itching to travel, this really grabbed our attention. But to start, tell us about this trip. Where did they go? And how did this thing come together?
So this is a guy that, the way he explained it, when he went to college, he was given a lot of these sort of opportunities that just don't present themselves at HBCUs. He fell in love with the national park system and camping by taking advantage of them as a college student.
Our national parks, I think, it's one of the best treasures in America. I mean, it's so amazing just to be out in these parks.
Comes to Bowie State, realizes there's not a lot of these same opportunities. Long story short, he gets this grant from the American Association of Geographers and is able to put together this trip that he's kind of dreamed about, especially coming out of the pandemic and having that itch to travel. So they fly out to Denver with all their camping gear, rent a van, and just did this long drive through Four Corners and Grand Canyon, the Rocky Mountains, and just saw all kinds of things that you have no possibility of seeing here without either, driving or flying halfway across the country, and just kind of opening people up to new opportunities that just, again, aren't available here.
And what did Professor Reddy say about, why it's so important that he could take, minority students to these beautiful, expansive places?
Well, he kind of goes back to, first off, the history of these national parks. And in a lot of cases, they weren't necessarily welcoming, if not downright hostile to minority people. It sort of became clear to a lot of, especially African-American people over time, that they weren't necessarily welcome, that they weren't allowed to be in these national parks. And maybe that was the case decades ago, but it is not the case now. But when you have a whole race of people that, not always, but in a lot of cases, are more used to urban environments, going out into the mountains, into the desert, and places like that, that's sort of beyond their comfort level. And it's just not what many of them are used to. They don't have that opportunity. They don't have the chance then to pass that down to further generations, friends, family, that sort of thing. And it's just sort of this cycle that has perpetuated itself over time. And so all these students that might have grown up around here, per se, they're not going on camping trips, especially that far out. As he said, representation matters.
If people don't see similar people doing some of these activities, they'll think it's not for you. And, in our country, in our country's history, African Americans have been restricted to going to a lot of these places. And, that's kind of set into that mindset that, okay, I'm not welcome here. There's no reason for me to go here, but we need to change that narrative.
So by exposing people that are not used to that sort of environment, for one, he wants his students to sort of fall in love with the national park system. So many people have. I mean, there are people, their whole life is going on vacation to different national parks and seeing different places like that.
Or trying to hit every single one of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that matters to some people. Based on my conversation with him and the student Malika Dixon, it doesn't seem like that sort of hobby or passion really resonates with too many minority people in this country. So he was hoping to sort of change that, show people other parts of the country, and just kind of help them foster a greater appreciation for what is out there beyond just, I guess the East Coast or the South or something like that.
And so you actually talked to Malika Dixon about this. What'd she say about that 10-day excursion? What was it like?
Well, for her, sort of the two things that really stuck out to me. At one point, she mentioned how she could count on her fingers how many other black people she saw at all these different national parks, 5 national parks over 10 days.
We never got to see them. It was really weird. It was like we're just the only ones there.
But the other thing was, she was able to just take these majestic pictures. She's posting them on Instagram, social media, and all of her friends are freaking out saying, how did you do this?
Right.
This is awesome. I mean, there's certainly a lot of just amazing pictures and visuals and scenery.
The views, the views, it's picture perfect. It's something you can't compare anything to. You see the pictures of people doing it online and stuff, but actually going there, it's just an experience. It's something you can never imagine. Oh, this is actually out here. You can go and visit these places and see the views. They're gorgeous. They're stunning.
She was exposed to that. That got other friends interested in seeing it after they saw those pictures and realized that these are opportunities that do present themselves and give you a chance to go see.
They want to go there now that they've seen these pictures of these beautiful places and seen that people like them are doing it.
And it was almost like, I guess, on a micro scale, what Dr. Reddy was trying to do is, expose more people from underrepresented parts, expose more people to those visuals, to the national park system, get them interested in it, and sort of boost the desire to go see that sort of thing. And at least on Bowie State's campus, at the small level, that seemed to have an impact. It seemed to work the way he was hoping it would.
it just takes that initial ball to get rolling for people to see that, even though these are far away, we are welcome. These belong to all of us, and we can actually go there.
So is he going to get to do this every year? Is this an annual thing now?
It's not an annual thing. This was, I believe, a one-time grant, but certainly, like, that's his goal, is to kind of keep doing this, and not just for himself. Like, he made clear that.
I hope that more people will contact me saying, hey, Dr. Reddy, how can I plan my own trip? And I'm always willing to help. And, our students are here to share their stories.
He's happy to help pass his knowledge along and make it possible to get more people interested and make more of these trips available to people that just don't have them available right now.
Yeah, everybody thinks about traveling to, different countries, but we have a lot to offer here in this country that we haven't seen. So it's just a really neat opportunity for them. Very cool. John Domen, thank you for telling us about this program and, a little bit of change happening in our area.
And before we go, I want to let all the listeners know that if you see C-3PO or Captain America riding on the Metro, there's not some, warp in the space-time continuum or catastrophic event.
Or is there?
There might be. But there's also going to be AwesomeCon. AwesomeCon is this weekend.
Yeah, it's down at the convention center. I kind of love it. I kind of love seeing everybody dressed up and
Just
the
nerd out.
cosplay and whatever.
Let's go.
I went to their website and they said they celebrate all things geek. And for the 90s kids like me, Melissa Joan Hart is going to be in town with all of the Sabrina the Teenage Witch cast.
Let's go.
Which I feel like I would recognize them if I was in a coffee shop. I'd be like, excuse me, wait. Sabrina, is that you? No, it's cool. And actually, there's still tickets available. So if your kid's into it or, some kids are into anime and different video games and stuff.
Yeah.
It's $90 a ticket for the whole weekend. So something to do.
Yeah, and it's in its 9th year. It would be 10, but the pandemic in 2020, obviously they couldn't do it then.
Yeah.
And they actually told WTOP's Jason Fraley that the guest list is fire. So they are pretty confident about their guest list. So, check it out.
I love it. Well, you can find all that information on our website. And that does it for us today for the DMV Download, sponsored by Steamfitters Local 602.
Our managing editor is Craig Schwab, and our music is by Real World.
Leave us a review or rate our show if you get the chance, and follow us on social media where we post every day different stuff from behind the scenes.
And if you want to find out more about the show and become one of our VIP listeners, go to dmvdownload.com.
The DMV Download is a product of WTOP News. Listen on 103.5 FM in D.C., 107.7 FM in Virginia, 103.9 FM in Frederick, online at WTOP.com, and on the WTOP News app. Rock on, guys.
Just for the record, that was off script. That was memorized, folks. Have a great night.